Wow, what a busy week on Capitol Hill with the speaker confusion and President Biden's Oval Office address.
Joining us now to discuss it is the Week in Politics, is Paul Lisnek. Paul,
hey
thank
guys.
you.
By the way, Byron Donald's one of 10 so far.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them in there.
That's right.
So let's take us back, not to the beginning of the Jim Jordan saga, but how all of this happened. Because it's easy to lose sight. Kevin McCarthy essentially did a deal with the devil.
You know, that is so important. I was actually thinking about this earlier tonight, that Kevin McCarthy's making the speeches and how wrong this all is. And I was thinking to myself, Kevin, you let this happen because he agreed to the rule, which he had to get the votes back then, agreed to the rule that one person can call for your ouster and you're good with that. So that rule can be changed. It has been changed over the years. Nancy Pelosi had it, that didn't have it. So, but had Kevin McCarthy not allowed it or required, 7, 10, whatever the number would be, we wouldn't be in this situation. So in many respects, he kind of did this to himself. The new speaker probably will have to go along with the same rule because the powers that be, unless they truly unite around somebody strongly, the powers that be will probably require the same thing.
Well, Biden had a speech yesterday about getting money for humanitarian aid for Israel and Ukraine, but they can't do anything when the House is still in limbo, right?
And in fact, and of course, he didn't say that last night. I mean, he took sort of the high road on that.
To it a little bit.
Right, but basically he talked about unity and democracy and protecting us and protecting the world and all that. But Michael, you're absolutely right. The Senate may act on it and they may pass that request, but the House is paralyzed. They cannot do everything, which is why for a short while there was talk about giving Patrick McHenry, the speaker, temporary speaker, the power to do this or stay in there till the end of the year kind of thing. And of course, that fell apart. So that was really the only way. So at this point, until there is a speaker, there will be no allocation of money for those countries.
Can we talk just a little bit about the hostage release? How much do you think Biden's visit there to Israel led to this release?
I don't think we know.
Okay.
And I don't know that his visit led to that release. I do think, look, this is not about Hamas finally realized it's time to be good people. So let's put that aside. I think they have whatever their motive is, and even the Biden administration isn't talking about this. It may very well have been that they were trying to hold off the Israeli attack, because that is one thing Biden, who did go there, asked Israel to hold back a bit. We get a couple of American prisoners from right here at home, right? Yeah. And I think, and now it seems to be that Israel may be holding back a little bit. That may have been the purpose, but arguably, given the way Hamas thinks, maybe to give them more time to prepare. I don't know. Nobody knows.
A lot on the menu of the Paul Lisnek Friday Night Special.
Sure.
So let's get to the race for president and these interesting developments out of the Georgia case against Donald Trump and his compatriots. We now have 3 people, the latest Sidney Powell, pleading guilty and flipping. If you're Donald Trump, are you worried?
You are. And Ken Chesebro, too, of course, who went down today. Because both of them are in the room where it happened, so to speak. And so if you're Trump, I mean, he'll pretty soon he'll be saying he never heard of them, doesn't know them, and all of that. But, well, it's kind of the MO. But for those 2 people, and by the way, Ben, they are working with the government because both of them got a deal that essentially gave them no jail time. I mean, 2 sweet deals. They were also smart to do it now. I was on the news the other morning and made the point, will Chesebro have a deal? And the answer is, well, if he's going to do it, he's going to do it before that jury pick starts. And that's exactly what happened. And that's when those things can happen. But absolutely, now that they've turned, and by the way, they're probably working with Jack Smith too. Because if you're Sidney Powell, why would you do all of this knowing that everything you say in these trials can be used?
You admit to some acts in Georgia, you better believe the
and
folks
Jack
in
Smith
Washington
is waiting
are
for
watching.
you. So we haven't heard about any deal. I don't think there is one. But clearly there's discussion between her lawyers and Jack Smith.
What about Rudy Giuliani? Could he be next?
Well, I think, it depends. Look, Fani Willis is after somebody. I think we would all agree she's after Donald Trump. Whether she's after Rudy Giuliani, I don't know.
Well, maybe she gets to Donald Trump by going this,
But the point is, if Donald Trump is her main target, then she may very well offer Rudy some kind of plea. Now, does he get a no jail term plea? As good. The thing is, the earlier you agree, the better the deal. These people went down at the very beginning, both having requested a speedy trial, and they get the best deal possible. The longer it goes on, the worse the deal.
So if we can bring this conversation back to where it all started, I wonder if any of this, you sense, is having an impact on the mood of the Republican electorate, right? Whether it's the chaos in the Republican Party in the U.S. House, whether it's new developments in the Trump cases. Any sign any of this is moving the needle?
By the way, one other thing I wanted to say on the previous question, which is one of the things that concerned, I think, people, is the fact that had Fani Willis proceeded with that trial, then her theory would be on the table. And the Trump team and the Rudy team, they're waiting for that because they want to see what Fani Willis is going to do. That's all off the table now. In terms of how Republicans are seeing it, more so than the Georgia case, Ben, I'm looking at really the speaker thing, because Trump supported McCarthy. Trump supported Jim Jordan.
Right. Yeah.
That didn't work. Now, I don't think there's any dent in the power of Trump, but at least in that race, I think that's what's giving Republicans pause. An interesting, if you want, give me some proof. Well, Jordan was always down about 20, 22. But when they had the secret vote today, do you want Jordan to be your guy? It was 100. Yeah. So clearly there's a fear not only of Jordan, because people think he would get retribution, but clearly of Trump as well.
But if you're Jack Smith, wouldn't you be smart to call on these people? Because a part of their plea deal is that they can, testify in other cases, right?
Well, he can call upon them if he gives them immunity, or he grants some kind of plea with them on the federal. Then they're his too. So he absolutely wants to do something with it, but they wouldn't do it unless there's a deal. But they're going to have to talk in Georgia. So there has to be something going on. Otherwise, they're doing themselves no favor.
What's on the show this week?
Hey, a really interesting show. We're going to talk about these kinds of issues. Congressman Brad Schneider joins me, and we're going to talk about the speaker situation and Israel. He, of course, very active on those issues. Alderman William Hall, Reverend William Hall, the 6th Ward, was just in Texas visiting the border towns. He's going to join me and talk about what that visit was like and what he thinks the problems are and how to fix it. And then next week, when I do the midday news at 11:45 on Wednesday, I'm talking to Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn, who just wrote a book. So that's going to be pretty interesting. And on Friday of next week, I talk with McKay Coppins, the writer of at The Atlantic, who just wrote apparently a definitive biography. A lot of talk about it on Mitt Romney. So those two things coming up on the midday show next week, Wednesday
he's
and
promoting
Friday.
a lot of stuff.
I know. Can you believe all this stuff that's going on in politics, though? It keeps you busy.
When is it quiet?
I know.
When is it quiet?
I hope we're not paying you per word.
I hope you are.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, guys.